So my talk was about human curiosity, because curiosity, I think, is one of the most important things, because it drives so many things. It drives all scientific research, it drives education, it drives storytelling of all shapes, you know, the writing of books, the making of films, it drives the best works of art, and it even drives a conversation, because you don't want to listen to somebody unless you are somewhat curious about what they have to say. So what I've done is, in the past 4 years, I have looked at a lot of the research that has been done on curiosity, both on the psychology side and on the neuroscience side. And I try to describe, you know, what has been found and why this is very, very important also for our society today, where there is a certain wave of anti-intellectualism, which I think curiosity can solve. In addition, I coined this phrase, curiosity is the best remedy for fear, because I truly believe in that, because very often when we are afraid of something, it's because we know too little about it, or, you know, we don't understand it. But if we become curious about it and we learn more about it, then we are much less afraid of it. So I truly believe that curiosity is the best remedy for fear.
¿Alguna pregunta?
You live in Israel. Have you?
No, I live in the US.
In the US, but you are Israeli.
I grew up in Israel.
In Israel. Is there a way to, with all these wars going on, is there a way to have an application of your theory that curiosity is the best remedy for fear?
Yeah, yes. I believe, you know, let's not talk about a very specific war, but let's talk more in general. You see, for example, there is a huge refugee problem in the whole world right now, in Europe, in the US, and so on. And what sometimes is done by various regimes or by various economies and so on is they try to actually make people afraid of these refugees, because they say, oh, they are all terrorists, or they are all criminals, or they are all something else. And people who don't know much about these refugees, they are fearful, they are afraid of this, and so they are really much less likely to try to solve the problem, to try to help, to be compassionate, you know, to show some empathy. But if people bothered to be more curious about these refugees, understand where they're coming from, why they are coming, you know, what are they running away from, and, you know, understanding that many of them, these are just families with small children and so on, and then I think that their entire attitude to this problem would be completely different, and people would be less afraid and therefore more willing to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Curiosity is something we can learn, or how the new generations can start.
Yes. So a significant component of curiosity is genetic. I mean, there are many studies that show that at the 40 or 50% level, curiosity is genetic. So if your parents, your grandparents are all very curious people, you are more likely to be curious yourself. But that still leaves 50 to 60% that is not genetic. And curiosity can definitely be enhanced. How do you enhance curiosity? So one way is to ask many questions, but also not to always give immediate answers. Let's suppose that, you know, a child asks you, I don't know, why birds can fly but humans cannot. Instead of trying to give an answer right away, answer in the following way. You say, why do you think birds can fly and humans cannot? And then the child will say something. You know, maybe because the birds are lighter or something. So you will say, oh, well, let's test if that is correct or not. If that is the true answer, then that would mean, for example, that there can be no bird that is heavier than a human. So are there birds that are heavier? And this way you conduct a conversation and you encourage the child to ask more questions. So that's one way. A second way that you could do is to start with something that the child, let's say you're talking about children, is already curious about. And I'll give you an example. Let's suppose that you want to teach children that because of gravity, things accelerate towards the Earth. Now, you will take a 5-6-year-old child and tell them, you know, there is gravity and things accelerate towards the Earth. They are not very interested in this. So they will not be particularly curious about this thing. However, most children, for example, at that age, are very curious about dinosaurs. At least in the US, that is true. All children are fascinated by dinosaurs. So start with dinosaurs. And you tell them, okay, you know, you start teaching them not about acceleration and gravity, you start teaching them about dinosaurs. And they are curious about this and they want to hear more and more. And then you say, oh, but you know what? Actually, the dinosaurs all became extinct. And you know why they became extinct? Because some 60 million years ago, an asteroid came and hit the Earth. Actually, it hit in Mexico, near the Yucatan Peninsula. And that killed the dinosaurs. But you know why that asteroid came and hit the Earth? Because the gravity of the Earth attracted that asteroid and made it accelerate towards the Earth. So you started from something that the child is already curious about, and you reach the point which you wanted to make to the child, instead of starting from that from the beginning.
Here, sorry.
Yes.
Well, I want to touch the two topics that you said about the science and the field. First, why is improving the technology, the science in general, eventually the scientific or even the society has feel? Because, for example, in the genetic field, they don't know what would happen if they make a stronger or smarter people, or to make androids, or to make that kind of technologies or improvements that I told you, it makes feel that society and even the scientists have fear. Then, do you think that this is a contrary idea of your thesis? Because eventually, when you are a curious person, you're gonna have, or you're gonna touch a point when you're gonna have fear. When you are researching more.
I'm not sure I understood your question. I understood that you're talking about that technology will improve and introduce new sciences and so on. But then what is at the end the question?
Okay, sorry. Again. Eventually, when you are researching more, even if you are a curious person, you're gonna get in a point, fear.
Where you know everything?
When you don't know what is beyond of our knowledge.
No, I mean, this is how science has always progressed and will continue to progress. Namely, what happens is that every curiosity is to answer certain questions. But every question actually opens new, when you answer it, it opens new questions, which are deeper questions. You see, at one point, we did not know that our universe started with a Big Bang, you know. We were thinking other things, yes? But now we know, but we don't understand the Big Bang itself. We want to understand what's happening there. Or similarly, you know, thousands of years ago, people believed that humans were created in a certain fashion. Now we know about evolution, we know about, there are experiments to try even to understand the origin of life. from chemistry. So there are always new questions. What happens is that you push the questions deeper and deeper. There is absolutely no danger whatsoever that at some point you will run out of questions. You will just get more important and deeper questions.
But in this sense, for this fear, is that the scientific, for example, in the genetic field, how I say, are requesting regulations to stop the velocity of the research because...
Okay, so I now understand about regulations and things and so on about science. Yes, so there are some aspects of curiosity that in principle can be not so good. For example, most people today would agree that human cloning is not a good idea. Even though, you know, the possibility to clone humans is perhaps not very far away. I mean, because, you know, a whole host of animals have been cloned. So yes, there are certain ethical rules that do need to be obeyed. Another situation where curiosity can be bad is, for example, I mean, if the government listens on your phone calls, people don't like that. You know, when the NSA in the United States, it was leaked that they are listening to people's phone calls, you know, people got very upset by this. Because this is now a modern version of eavesdropping. Or, you know, if some people do wiretapping and things like that. So, yes, there are some potential negative aspects of curiosity, you could say, of curiosity, and they need to be controlled. The topics I discuss mostly in my book, why, are the positive curiosity. I mean, the one that drives science, education, you know, and all that. But definitely there are these negative aspects that do need a certain control by ethics, by morals, and you know, by laws even.
I'd like to ask you something. The connection between curiosity and very different issues. I mean, this is something that happens in the brain. So the connection of curiosity with intelligence, perhaps, with the traits of survival, socialization, and language, but one is specific, which is will. I mean, curiosity, I think, might be linked to will. A person is curious because he's asking a lot of questions. So there is some sort of motivation in that sense.
So you asked many questions in one question.
Yeah.
So let me try to address some of those. So first of all, maybe the closest link that has been found is between curiosity and creativity. Now, creativity is not the same as curiosity. Creativity is when you introduce a completely new domain or make fundamental changes to an existing domain. Curiosity in itself is not yet creativity. However, from studies of many creative individuals, it was found that if there is one thing that is common to all these creative individuals in different disciplines, it is that they are extremely curious. So curiosity appears to be a necessary condition for creativity. I mean, it's not a sufficient condition for creativity, but it is a necessary condition for creativity. And you can even understand that because, you see, very often being creative means being able to apply ideas from one discipline in another discipline, right? I mean, you know, that's part of being creative. But being able to do that requires that you have been very curious to begin with so that you know about these different disciplines and what they do. The other question you asked was about the relationship between curiosity and intelligence. So only relatively recently there have been studies of that, and there is a correlation. It's not enormous, but there is a correlation between intelligence and curiosity. So yes, on the average, more intelligent people tend to be somewhat more curious, but it is not, a very strong correlation. The other thing to be remembered is that there are huge individual differences among people. in curiosity and in many other psychological traits, yes, but huge individual differences, both in terms of what people are curious about, yes. I mean, somebody may be curious about understanding the Big Bang, and somebody else may be very curious about the love life of royal families. These are very, very different topics, but the two people may still be very curious about them. The other differences are in the intensity of curiosity. Some people are extremely curious. Some people, you give them a little bit of information and that's sufficient. Finally, I'm not sure if there was another component.
Well, several, survival and language as well.
Survival and language, yes. So clearly, curiosity ultimately evolved because of survival. Because people had to understand their environment in order to be able to survive. People had to know that you don't just walk off a cliff because, you know, if you did that, you were... So, the curiosity evolved to understand how your environment works, what are the causes and effects, and how, you know, that can affect your life. However, and here it's an important however, in humans, curiosity always far exceeded that needed for mere survival. You see, we didn't need to be curious about quantum mechanics to survive. We don't need to understand the Big Bang in order to survive day to day. So it is interesting that humans have always been more curious than what was necessary to survive. The other thing I should mention, you see, my book is called Why, and there is a reason for that. Because humans are actually the only species that is capable of asking why, even about unseen causes. And how do we know that? How do we know, let's say, that chimpanzees don't ask why about causes that they don't see? They've done experiments, many experiments, but let me describe just one, where children that are like 4 years old and chimpanzees were given a certain object which looked completely symmetrical, like this bottle here. But the researchers put some hidden inside the object, some unseen weights, so that the object could not be made to stand. You know, however you tried to put it, it all the time kept falling. Now, both the children and the chimpanzees were asked, you know, to put it to stand like this. What happened was that after a number of trials like this, more than 60% of the children, when they saw they cannot make this stand, they took the object in their hand, started inspecting it, starting to feel it, you know, and so on. None of the chimpanzees did that. So the chimpanzees just continued to try to make it stand. They were not curious why, you know, these unseen causes don't make the thing stand.
Yeah, I have a last question.
Yes.
Then, in this part, do you think that losing the fear or being more curious can let us improve the technology and the science?
I'm not sure I understand your question, but I'll try to answer a different question that I'm asked very often, and maybe that's what you're referring to. People ask me very often, I mean, is the fact that we now have the internet, you know, we have information literally at our fingertips, we have Wikipedia, we have Google, is that somehow killing curiosity? And my answer is absolutely not, and I'll tell you why. You see, the most important questions are questions that we try to do scientific research on. Now, to those questions, we don't actually know the answers. That's why we are researching them. But that means that we cannot find the answers on the internet. So the internet cannot help us there. But it's more than that. There is one thing that the availability of the information at our fingertips does help us with, and that's what I call specific curiosity. That's the need for a very specific piece of information. What was the name of the actor who played in that movie? That we can now answer very fast using the internet, yes? But that is, you know, a relatively unimportant component of curiosity, and at the end, being able to find that answer fast only helps us in, getting more curious about the things that we really are curious about. So, for example, in my own work, I find that the internet only enhances my curiosity, because I can get rid of some of the, very simple things, who did this in that year, I don't know what, and so on, and concentrate on the real questions. So I don't think that the availability of Wikipedia, internet, this and so on, kills curiosity. I think it can actually make us even more curious. At the end of the day, curiosity comes from the inside, not from the outside.
One more question, thank you. I would like to, you've given several examples, the one on the chimpanzees, the interest of children in dinosaurs, and the human need to understand quasars. I believe that was
cause and effect.
Okay, from a very conceptual point of view, is curiosity somehow established in different stages or categories? You spoke about intensity, but are there any, say, scales as to measure curiosity? How would you approach the issue?
Yes, there are no good scales at the moment to actually measure curiosity. I mean, we do know that small children ask why all the time, and they ask less why later. The main reason is that they really have a very strong need at the beginning to understand cause and effect, because they need to cope with their environment. Later, they know more and they, ask less. Perceptual curiosity, our ability to be surprised, does decrease somewhat with age, and also our willingness to take risks for novelty decreases somewhat with age. But our epistemic curiosity, the love of knowledge, wanting to learn new things, no, it keeps roughly constant across all ages. So yes, but there is no good, defined scale that measures exactly curiosity.
Actualmente ha habido una evolución con los niños, con temas tecnológicos y otras causas sociales quizás en estos momentos. ¿Usted cree que eso ha mermado la curiosidad en los niños o la ha alimentado?
So the question is about children and what technology does to them. So I answered part of that already, in the sense that I do not think that technology or the availability of information kills curiosity with children or otherwise. I believe that at some level it does enhance curiosity. I think there are certainly effects, serious effects, on culture in general, not necessarily on curiosity only, that are associated with technology, social media, and so on. For example, it is very often today the case that you will see a couple sitting in a coffee shop, and instead of talking to each other, each one of them is looking at their cell phone. So this has somewhat changed social interaction, no doubt, and perhaps even affected at some level the curiosity of the people about each other. My daughter told me a story that she liked to go, when she goes on travel abroad, to sleep in hostels, in youth hostels, because she said usually that's where you meet people from all kinds of other places and you talk to them. But she said that in recent years, you go to these youth hostels and everybody there sits with their laptop and talk on Facebook with their friends at home. So the interaction certainly has at some level suffered from this. So there is no doubt that there are effects of the availability of social media on a variety of cultural effects. There are also, and this is measured, there is a decrease in the number of people who actually read books. People still read, but they read blog posts, tweets, things like that, and so on, instead of reading entire books. That has an effect, because you see, reading a book is very different from, let's say, seeing a film or a video. You see, if you read a book and somebody in the book walks into a room, the writer now needs to give you the full feel of that room. So they describe what this person sees, describes the mood of the room, things like that and so on. All of that is now captured in one picture. And as a result of this, you have to use your imagination a little bit less. And also you have to use your vocabulary a little bit less. So there are various effects. But at the same time, you know, I mean, human history is full of various changes at different times. And humans so far survived all these changes. I mean, there was an enormous change when printing was invented. So we're facing now something somewhat similar to this, and we're yet to see what the effects are going to be.